Patreon subs, watch the complete and unedited video over there. You know why. You know why. This is not a video dunking on any religion or church. It's a video about how I chose a church, why I went, and why I stopped going. You might find it useful. Also, at the end, I explain why I'm looking for a new church, but I accept that I might not ever find one, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm a millennial, and I'm observant, as many of you have noticed. I have a great interest in religion, and this happens to be my story. It's mine personally, but I think it reflects a lot of what's going on right now, and it reflects a lot of our stories about religion. Let me start by saying that I did not grow up in any organized church, but I was exposed to a lot of religion in my young life. My mom was raised Catholic, but as many people have, she left the church. My grandparents were Catholic, and my grandma, she always used to bring me to church to have the priest bless me because, my mom was a heathen. She had no other choice. My grandma was born in 1929. She was doing her best. Anyway, my mom read the New Testament to us at night for bedtime stories, but she also read from a lot of other religious books and a lot of fairy tales from all around the world. These were more so morality tales so that we could learn how to be a better person, not necessarily what to believe in. We used to watch these Indian religious epics and dramatized versions of the Bhagavad Gita when my mom was braiding my hair when I was little. So I was exposed to a lot. Oh, plus, she went back to school for Egyptology when I was 7 years old because she ended up getting her master's degree in Egyptology. That was actually really interesting. And through that, when I was about 10, she took us to the Transcendental Meditation Center because you can teach children Transcendental Meditation. My mother believed that there was truth in all traditions. And of course, she was right. Caution. On the flip side to that is that all traditions have elements of untruth. We see this all the time in Rate My Cult. I have a whole playlist. Go check that out. A cult leader, they'll twist the scriptures, they'll twist the philosophy and make it suit their egos, their personal purpose. So we cannot dogmatically follow any creed. It leads to extremism. It leads to violence, especially against heretics, against apostates, and against non-believers. So be careful. Anyway, despite my mother and my grandmother's attempts to steer us towards the good spiritual path, I'm a millennial. You know what society is like. I don't have to tell you. Something happened to our culture about 20 years ago, give or take 5 years. And we've just been in this tailspin. I think it was the internet, but we'll get back to that. And we'll do it in other videos. So we can't really put the blame on millennials for rejecting religion here. The circumstances we had growing up were just not great. We remember Waco in 1993. That was religion gone wrong. I just did a video. We saw religious extremism for 9/11, and that led to subsequent wars in the Middle East, almost religious wars. Remember when George W. Bush described it as a crusade? Like, what kind of Pope Gregory stuff is that? Then the evangelicals started worshiping Bush, and that whole decade, the 2000s, was just a religious mess. And the new atheism movement was a backlash to that, a deserved backlash to that. And that's really what we saw growing up. It's what we grew up seeing, this just religious mess. It's really no wonder that my friends and my siblings are so against religion in any form. Even if I tell them now that I believe in something greater than myself, they look at me like I've got two heads. My family is staunchly atheist. My father's side is Christian, but I didn't really grow up around them, and I spend more time around my mother's side of the family, just because of circumstances. And so, when I moved to Los Angeles, I joined a church. I needed some kind of community because I was, leaving everybody I knew and coming to a new city. So I joined a community based on a mutual philosophy and a desire to take good action. Good, great. How does one find such a community? But what church? What church was I supposed to find? I didn't believe in a set creed except, be good to others, be kind, and to act in better ways. But that's easier said than done. You kind of go to church to find how to be good to others and to find how to act in better ways. Sometimes we think we're being good, but what does that mean in practice? Our brain will always justify our actions to ourselves. So we can't trust ourselves to know what is good. Unfortunately, until you get older and then you realize through trial and error, like, oh, that made someone feel really bad. That wasn't good, but it made me feel good. So was it good? No, no, it wasn't. Anyway, this is why you go to church. So I found the least church I could possibly find, Unitarian Universalists. Now, I'm not here to pick on the UUs. It was a great church for the years that I went. I met a lot of good people, did a lot of volunteer work with the community, and I found comfort on many a Sunday morning. So I got nothing but good things to say about the UUs. You might be like, what are Unitarian Universalists? Well, they believe that like everybody's cool, man. They used to be Christian, but after many evolutions and schisms, they now believe that we should be there for each other all along our spiritual journey. Something about the interdependence of all things and respecting everyone and their choices. Cool. There's no specific book. There's no specific deity. It's like whatever deity you got, man, that's cool. The door's open for everyone. And that's what I really liked about this, because I didn't have to believe or pretend to believe anything that I didn't. In my opinion, that makes the UUs probably one of the sanest religions around. Some people say it's not a religion. There was this judge in Texas that says, you guys don't have any set beliefs. You're not a religion. But I feel that they're much more religion than going to these mega churches where nobody could possibly know your name, or the prosperity gospel that's there to milk the followers. UUs believe in equality of the sexes. They accept every race and religion and sexual orientation. Basically, they align with my values. And I don't have to pretend to believe in anything that I don't. That was always my rule. I was never going to pretend to believe in anything that was obviously not true. And it was great. We had this old Reverend, and he picked the greatest works of philosophy and religion from all across history. He was 60 about this time, and he'd seen the world change and the world change back. He may not have supported any particular religious creed, but he had a firm grasp on philosophy and human nature. And he really showed us that if human beings worked together toward helping each other, that if we sacrificed and we strategized, we could make a brighter future. It's not going to be easy. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. We had to put the work in, but with enough effort, with enough work, we could do it. We had this associate minister. She was great. She was a mother. She had a great deal of wisdom. And then we had a guest minister who would come in and speak every once in a while. You know, she was young, but she was also really good, really wise, and just helpful. All of these sermons I got something out of. I loved going to my church. I got involved in the community. We did a lot of work on immigrant detention, which, believe it or not, was a major issue before 2015. People kind of forget about it, but like back then it was a major issue too. I got to work with the homeless, and I occasionally volunteered at Planned Parenthood. Now at the time, Planned Parenthood was offering women's health care and STD testing and prevention. So they're really helping a lot in the community. And it was great. I got to do something that helped other people. I even brought my new boyfriend, he's now my husband, and he came to church with me, and he was like, great, we got to go to church now. And I was like, yeah, we go to church now. This is crazy because he's one of the biggest atheists you'll ever meet, or he used to be. Anyway, story's over, happy ending, we found a church, roll the credits. No, because our wise old Reverend decided to retire. Now, I don't know the details of why the associate minister or the visiting Reverend couldn't take the job because they were really good, but they couldn't or they wouldn't. So the search committee went looking elsewhere for a new Reverend. Gosh, you know it's not going to be good. No problem, I thought at the time, though. All these reverends are trained in the same tradition. The church committee is smart. The congregation is wise, and it's a democratic process. It's time for a change. He's tired. He's retiring. So they're going to do this search, and when it's all done, we'll be made whole again. Right? Wrong. Remember this one thing about people, very important. You cannot swap out one human being for another. This isn't a video game. We aren't characters. Humans are unique and amazing creatures. You can't say, I want a human in the style of this, and all of a sudden you get that human. If you find an extraordinary human being, you have to pay close attention because it doesn't always come around. Now, some of you may understand that I am aware of politics, particularly social politics, politics of groups, class dynamics, etc., etc. The first thing that soured me on this process of finding a new religious leader was the qualifications. See, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the problem. Me, it's me. I'm the problem, it's me. Maybe I expected too much from a reverend. I think they must be above worldly concerns, but that's not how institutions work. There's always politics in institutions. I found out that to qualify to be a reverend, one must have completed theology school. To me, that's hilarious because the UUs have no creed. What is the school? Whatever, it's fine. Also, one very important note is you can get to the truth through theology language, or you can get to the truth through sports language, or you can get to the truth through science and math language. It all comes back to the same thing. It's just how you get there, all roads lead to Rome. Anyway, for this reason, I personally value a reverend's experience and character over a degree. I will take a history major who's taken a vow of poverty and humility over a trained minister any day of the week. At least the history major sees how ideas play out in the real world. I used to have this crotchety old journalism professor. He should be a minister because he knows what it is. He knows the world like it is. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. He could actually tell people how it is. Anyway, I found out that to be a minister in this church, one needs a theology degree, and that degree runs about $60,000 a year. I know. What are you talking about? Excuse me, $60,000? So my reverend's going to have school debt? That's not what I was talking about by this vow of poverty. Not at all. A profit motive should not be involved in my religion. It can be involved in other people's religions. That gives me content for my YouTube, so it's a good thing. But it shouldn't be involved in mine because, no. Anyway, so then, whatever, I get over this. It's time to call the new ministers for a test. And there's finally a vote. Now, I personally did not get a vote, which the associate minister, she actually apologized to me for this later. But it wouldn't have made a difference. This person won with like 96% of the vote. It was a landslide. And that's not why I didn't go back, because I didn't get a vote. That would be petty. I didn't go back because the new minister had absolutely nothing to say. Nothing to say. I mean, she was young. She was 35. She was the child of other UU ministers, and she had no children. That's not a problem. Our visiting minister was young. It didn't matter that she didn't have any children. She was very wise. Would have loved to have her. Anyway, this new lady just didn't get it. Her inexperience showed in the sermon. The sermon contained, to me, I didn't consider it a philosophy. Nothing that I could identify or get behind. If there was one, it was this cult of positivity stuff that was going around in 2015. Just believe and the universe will make things right for you. Everything will turn out all right if you believe. Believe in yourself and believe in the people around you. That's dumb. If you were getting burned at the stake back in the day, back in the Middle Ages, it was your neighbors around you watching. Why would you believe in them? I can think of a lot of examples throughout history to show that people aren't necessarily good, and you shouldn't believe that things will turn out right just because you want them to. It takes effort. It takes sacrifice. It takes humility. And sometimes the world will just beat your ass for no reason. Then you have to pick yourself up and gaslight yourself back into the race. Check out my video on half-truths. It's basically a video on self-gaslighting. So you might need it, and sometimes we all need it. Then, at the end of this self-gaslighting, you better find some meaning. And guess what? That meaning might not be real. It might be a cope. It might be a figment of your imagination. No one will see your efforts. No one will congratulate you. And so what? You do these things anyway. You do them even if there's no God to give you a pat on the back at the end and said you did a good job. You don't do it to brag. You do them for yourself. This I believed is what the congregation also believed. I thought this. I was projecting on this. It's basically what our Reverend had told us through his many, many sermons and after national tragedies. But this new positivity person got 95% or more of the vote. Everyone went along with this. And what was it? It was positivity memes. I looked around like, oh, wow. Y'all people just need somewhere to go on a Sunday, huh? Wow. And I guess I just needed somewhere to go on a Sunday. So that's why I went. But when I went there, I had actually found more than that. I'd found something that has meaning in this old man who was giving us these life lessons. If I hadn't found anything, I would have stopped going. Everyone around me would have come to church, whether they were hearing meaning or not. And that clicked. I was like, oh, okay. Now, I got really disillusioned after that. I stopped going to church. I came to the realization that having no creed creates a vacuum that positivity memes can fill. And I hate slogans and I hate lies. I tolerate half-truths. That's true. And philosophical crutches, but I cannot follow lies. If a priest says, God spoke to me, I'm like, okay, this sermon is a comedy now, or it's a case study. It's not real anymore. And that's why I wanted to join a church that didn't believe in any of that mythical stuff, but still came from a Christian tradition. Turns out, You can't just believe in everything because it's easier for people to come in and say basically nothing. It was positivity word salad, and the congregation just ate it up. Now, I realize that having somewhere to go on a Sunday is also a form of meaning. People find meaning in their community and in their routine. The act of going to church on its own has meaning. For me, that didn't fill the hole that I had, but I respect those for whom it does. So I stopped going to church. It was no longer worth the time it took. Simple cost-benefit analysis. Like, why would I get up and leave my house on a Sunday morning? However, I did find a new church or spiritual practice, not a church. Technically, I found two. One, I wrote and painted this whole series called Gurukula. It's like a novella series. I'll put it up on my Patreon later. You'll see why it has to go on Patreon. Gurukula means in the house of the guru, and it's about these two young women in Los Angeles. Their guru dies, and they search the world for his reincarnation. It's basically my most favorite thing I have ever done. These two upper-class LA women, they're searching the world for meaning, but they destroy everything they come across because they're selfish. They're selfish crystal bitches, and they can't see that they are the problem. And their search for meaning is just completely narcissistic. They should just stay home and not bother people. I love it. It took me hundreds, maybe thousands of hours. It's like this novella series, and I did a 2 or 3. It's crazy. Probably how many paintings? Almost 100 paintings. And when I look at it, and I look at all these paintings, I'm like, you did that? Are you crazy? That person who did that is completely unrecognizable to me because it's so much. People are like, are you going to finish the third one? And I'm like, that's so much work. Who's going to do that? They're like, well, you did the first 2. I'm like, yeah, it's true. But I guess having lost the meaning of the church, I desperately was searching for something. And so I just did this massive amount of creative output. And I didn't even realize that it was so much creative output. But when I look back on it and I look back to doing it again, I'm just like, there's no way that is ever going to happen again. It was like a mad frenzy. I did this YouTube page in the mad frenzy of the coronavirus. So you guys know that's how I be. Also, at the same time, because I guess that wasn't enough, I also took up figure skating again, which is basically Tai Chi, but graceful and with other women. There's a tinge of competitiveness to it, but it's mostly self-improvement and humility. It's kind of my religion. For the uninitiated, figure skaters cut the ice with their blade. We're on 2 edges, so we really are moving on a razor's edge, and we're dancing on the head of a pin. It's just so metaphorical. All of our movements are in a circle. The circle is meaningful in every religion. Think about the circle of life. Think about the wheel of samsara, just coming back around and coming back around again, back to the beginning. There is no end. It all goes on forever. Plus, the ice doesn't care about you. If you can't do a move, it's because you're not good enough. But you can still be graceful and athletic, even if you can't jump as well as the kids. This is where the humility comes in. Humble myself every single day. But it's a sport. It combines physics and dance, and it's just the most perfect sport I can think of. But I had to stop going because I'm pregnant. Obviously, be really irresponsible if I was still figure skating right now. But I'm going to go back between my pregnancies and then when it's all over. And I hope my kids like the cold because they're going to be spending a lot of time at that ice rink. Children, your noses and your hearts will be as cold as mommy's. Anyway. Plus, I have this YouTube page, this YouTube channel. I do all these videos. I analyze cults and social movements and history. So I don't really need to go to church anymore for all the reading. I'm doing a stupid amount of reading. I do a stupid amount of research on religion. And I share it with you. That's incredibly fulfilling for me to get to share it with you. Now, unfortunately, you guys are all over the country. You're all over the world. And we can't get together once a week. I can't really see you in person. You see me, but I don't see you. Our children can't play together. It's just geography. So YouTube, even though it's really fulfilling for me, it's not the same as a church. And unfortunately, we're learning in real time how important religion is. I just feel the past 20 years has been a great social experiment. And with experiments, there aren't really any L's, only lessons, right? This new atheist hypothesis, it didn't work. Whoopsie. Because people need to believe in something greater than popular belief because popular belief is fickle. It comes in and out of fashion. Now, of course, there needs to be some evolution in what we believe in our religion, but not the way we see it today. As the country lost religion, and now that spiritual void has been filled with tribalism, with naked materialism, with celebrity idolatry. People support rappers and musicians like they're gurus. Like, what's the message? What are these gurus' message? Get money, get women? That's not anything. That's nothing. Now, there was a time when our musicians could have been called gurus because they did the work. You know, the Beatles, they traveled to India. This was in the 60s. I mean, even in the 80s, we had these great epic love ballads. You know, love lost, love found. People do need gurus, but they're taking what's available to them. And what's available to them are pop stars. People have brand loyalty, but they don't have loyalty to their neighbors. The jingles that we hear, those are our hymns. Those are our Gregorian chants. I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again for new people who haven't heard it. My cousin went to American Idol and she did a great job. She had a beautiful, meaningful song and a great story of overcoming, but that's not what American Idol is all about. So fine. Anyway, during the filming of the finale, but in the break, this host came out and started doing a call and response for the songs. You know, what would the audience have known? Was it poetry? Was it hymns? Have you been to America? No. It was brand jingles. Oh, 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 O'Reilly. And the audience would answer, auto parts. What? Bitter tribalism has become the modern belief system. What? What are we doing? Your tribe is humanity. We're all Americans. What is this red and blue thing? What does it even mean anymore? It's not even issues anymore. It's just being against the other person. People line up with whatever the memes tell them to do. But liberal doesn't mean liberal anymore. Liberal means free, to be free. And conservative, red pillars, they're just contrarians now. It's just whatever they say, I say the opposite. Tell me what you believe. I want to hear what these people believe. I'm listening, but they're not saying anything. They don't actually believe in anything. You're like, why are you bringing this up? This seems like a very long rant for you. It is a very long rant. But I said before, I'm also expecting a little baby in a few months. And I'm bringing children into this mess. I know. You're like, how could you bring a child into this? That's what a lot of people think. But I'm bringing a kid into this. I'm going to bring more kids into this. And I hope you do too. But you got to think, what beliefs are they going to hold? I can personally teach them a lot. I can teach them a whole lot. But they kind of need a community that holds similar beliefs. And right now I'm looking around, I'm like, I don't see how that happens. That's the thing I'm most nervous about as an expectant parent. Now, my husband's family is Catholic. Of course, he left the church. My mother's family, they were Catholic. Some of the surviving members on her side are Eastern Orthodox, which is making a comeback in the red pill community, by the way. It's out there in the online sphere. Have you seen this Orthodox trend online that really came out of left field? It's interesting. I get it. I get it because it's something to believe in. And the Orthodox rituals are second to none. My cousin, no joke, she got married for all of eternity. Their souls are joined for all of eternity. Forget about all of this to death do us part kind of stuff. If they get reincarnated as swans, they're each other's swan boos. That's it. We're stuck together. That's it. Anyway, she was raised Orthodox. She's not in this trend. I'm just saying that it's also a trend online, which is very interesting. Very interesting. So I could take the kid to Catholic church, but neither me nor my husband believe in any of those myths. Like, this dude walked on water and he turned water into wine. And now I'm supposed to take his advice on the human genome. I think we're projecting a lot on this man because for someone who lived 2,000 years ago, what's he supposed to have to say about the genome? What do his opinions matter? He doesn't even know what a genome is, if he existed. Now, honestly, if the Catholic Church was still speaking Latin the whole time, I'd be more likely to go because Latin is more of a ritualistic language. It's dead, so we acknowledge that these stories are myth. It's kind of like a shaman banging on a drum and chanting. Now, I know that the myths and the rules are goofy, but having no set myths and no set rules seems to be even goofier. And we've seen this in the past 10 years, that the elites became atheists, and now their belief system is a mix of power and pseudoscience. But that belief is part of a new religion. We must acknowledge that that belief is part of a new religion, and they can call it science or whatever, but that's not true. It's a new religion. They call it science and people don't trust the science because it's gaslighting. The elite want us to believe these absurdities. If they can get people to believe these absurdities, they can get them to believe anything. I think at this point, these patently false beliefs are being pushed on us as a power play to make us say something so stupid that they must know that we don't believe it. And we know that they know that we don't believe it, but we have to say it or else. I just learned this great new Russian term. It's called vranyo, and it's from the Soviet days. It means to tell a lie in such a way that the listener knows that it is a lie. It's from this book, Occult Russia. I'm actually doing a full breakdown on my Patreon this week. But just for this particular video, that term, vranyo, is fantastic. We're seeing a lot of vranyo here repackaged. We have to lie because the elite ideology has taken hold. So what? So what? You're like, so it's taken hold. Just accept the elite ideology. It's as good as any. Well, the problem is it's a ideology. Cultural criticism is in vogue. We must tear apart our traditions, rip apart our stories, kill our heroes, and replace them with what? With what? Tribalism? With materialism? With hostility? So if my choice is brand loyalty versus a Christian myth that says man cannot live on bread alone, I'm going with the myth, even if it's a myth, because that myth has more truth in it than whatever else I'm being pushed. These corporations have become our churches. People have more loyalty to Apple than they do their parents. And that's the behavior that's being rewarded. And I'm supposed to let my children loose on this world? No!
Behold, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves.
Also, I'm doing a video soon about how TV shows went from being about community and family to being about being an influencer and being famous. And that switch also happened about 15 years ago. So that's one of the reasons my kids aren't having TV. They're not even going to know that TV exists. It's a mental toxin. It's much worse than it was when we were kids, when we millennials were kids. There was a time you could turn the kids to TV. You could let them out of the house and let them run and play with the community. They could be taught by their neighbors and their institutions, and you could trust it would be okay. That time is over. It's gone. Also, my kids are not having a phone until they turn 18 because these people online are crazy. They are nuts. I've done many videos about how madness has infected the noosphere. Many videos. It's the blind leading the blind on these cell phones. You're like, well, you're going to send them to public school? All those kids are going to have phones. What are you going to do then? Basically, the values that the culture holds in total really seep into your kids, whether you want them to or not. And that's what the process of socialization actually is. Maybe private school? That's expensive though. And then you can do like a homeschooling co-op. I mean, I'll be happy to do my days as teacher at the homeschooling co-op. I'll be like, hey kids, today we're learning about chaos. Today we are learning about how in the year 536, the sun went away and everybody had to resort to cannibalism. That would be a great co-op mom. That's a few years away at least. So yes, I'm going to have kids, even though the world's a bit of a mess right now, because the day is going to come when people get it together. It might not happen in my generation. It might not happen in the next generation, but in some generation down the line, humanity will get their shit together or else we'll destroy ourselves. It's going to be a good show either way. So if I never find another church, that's fine. I wasn't raised in a church and I turned out okay. The kids can play sports. They can learn about science. And at least that way, they'll form an understanding of the world that is based in reality. They'll have an admiration for the natural world and for creation. Creation, in my opinion, is the best thing ever. I'm really humbled to be a part of it. I just feel that we're living in a time of great transition right now, where God is dead. And then his body was dug up and burned again. And we're kind of between belief systems. The next belief system hasn't been established yet. And I just have to make peace with that. So if you're spiritual and not religious, are you finding the same downsides that I have? Did you just suck it up and go to church for the kids' sake? Or are you just like, whatever? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe.